Prepare for battle because America is worth fighting for. This is the Keith Lee Show. Bare-knuckled, no holds barred, and unapologetic. Here's your host, Keith Lee.
And hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Keith Lee Show. Thanks for joining us today. We're glad you are with us. It is Wednesday, October 7th, and we are just 27 days away from pushing back against the frontiers of ignorance, 27 days away from showing the left and showing the media that the silent majority will be silent no more. 27 days away from stopping the anti-American racist hate groups like Antifa and Black Lives Matter. We are just 27 days away from stopping them. And folks, you know, it's the last few days have been kind of glorious to see the media fall all over themselves because the president, my God, the president had the temerity to beat the coronavirus. Now, I know, technically speaking, if you look at the incubation period of the virus, it's anywhere between 10 and 14 days. And here we are, the president, no more than 3 or 4 days later, he's back at the White House. He's feeling really good. His doctors are saying that he hasn't had any symptoms in the last 72 hours, no fever, no need for additional supplemental oxygen, and the cocktail they gave him with the zinc and everything else has worked out really, really well. But if you listen to the media is absolutely besides themselves. I think they really hate the fact that this guy got better. You know, and to see them go back and forth, making all of these logical leaps about what's happening in the country, what's the president hiding. You know, the president goes into Walter Reed last week, and we mentioned this a couple of days ago. The president goes into Walter Reed, and the doctors say he was admitted out of precaution. The president was okay. He didn't necessarily have to go to Walter Reed, but we'll bring him there out of necessary and abundance of caution, as we keep hearing. And so the media says, oh my God, this can't be good. This can't be good. He's 74 years old. And by the way, he's obese. He's a big fat bastard. So, you know, there's about a 50-50 chance of this guy dying. And, oh my God, this is a constitutional crisis. Oh my God, maybe it's time to invoke the 25th Amendment. Oh my God, can it be President Pelosi? Because what if Mike Pence also has a coronavirus? Then it's President Pelosi time. Now, of course, here we are many days later. Vice President Pence is doing just fine. He's tested negative every single time he's been tested. And tonight, he'll be facing off against Kamala Harris in the vice presidential debate. But as we heard news from the doctors saying the president's doing well, and this is back on Friday, then, oh yes, unnamed sources, right? People close to the administration, people familiar with the situation are saying that the president is really in dire straits. And then the media over the weekend start harassing the doctors. Well, the president's doctor and that team at Walter Reed, well, they can't be trusted. They work for the president. They're probably being forced by the president to give a rosy endorsement of where his health is today. That's what the media is saying. And then, oh, by the way, here comes Monday night. Monday night, the president makes his triumphant return. Marine One. He stands at the top of the steps of the White House, salutes everybody. Oh, my God. He looks like Mussolini. Oh, my God. The president must really be hiding something. Oh, my God. What's the true story? They were all over the place. All over the place. Because they have the most ridiculous form of Trump derangement syndrome that I think anybody has ever seen. And by the way, this form of TDS has no cure. It has no cure. Could you imagine what's going to happen when the president wins re-election? Now, I'm going to get into that a little bit later because there have been some poll numbers coming out. I want to dive a little bit into those and give you my perspective as to where we are, just 27 days away from the election, 27 days away. But, you know, folks, I look at the landscape of this country and I really do have to shake my head because I know we're solid. The president has a 96% approval rating from Republicans. So I know we're good. I know we support this president. I know everything that we've had to put up with all the fake investigation and the fake impeachment and everything else that's happened to this president over the last 4 years. But I do get concerned about these people that call themselves independents. I really do. There was a poll that came out the other day from CNN. And there have been a few other polls that are kind of suggesting the same thing, that Joe Biden has now opened up a 16-point lead, a 16-point lead in the polls. That was a CNN poll that said that. There was another poll that came out just yesterday that shows Biden up by 14 points, and that there was a solid bump for Biden after the debates. Now, I'll be the first to admit, look, these polls are absolutely skewed. When you look at the breakdown of the poll, the internals of the poll, as I mentioned many times before on this program, the media has a tendency to oversample Democrats and they oversample independents. And in this particular poll with CNN, they oversampled independents by like 20 points. CNN is suggesting that 46% of the electorate are independents. And the vast majority of those independents are breaking for Joe Biden. But the thing that really shocked me, and again, even if you were to account for the fact that the poll numbers are cooked a bit, the questions that are being asked and how people are answering those questions to me is a little bit concerning. Questions are asked, well, who do you think's going to better handle the economy? Well, the president's beating Joe Biden by a couple of percentage points. I think it was 3 percentage points. But in almost every other category outside of that, we're talking about crime, we're talking about racial equity, we're talking about women's rights, we're talking about all the key points that the media keep putting out every single day. Biden is beating the president by double-digit points. Now, this concerns me a little bit. I don't believe the numbers. I don't believe Biden is up by 16. I'll reiterate that point. But we have to look at, my biggest concern is not what happens in November. My biggest concern is not even what's going to happen if the president is reelected. I'm thinking about what does it mean for this country going forward in the long term? And I think we really need to answer some tough questions. Whether the president is reelected or isn't reelected, we need to come up with a coherent idea, coherent philosophy of what conservatism is in this country. Because I think for far too long, conservatism has been shaped and molded by the media. And there are far too many people today, especially young people, that believe conservatism is toxic. Being a liberal today is a badge of honor. Liberals have been able, by lying, by putting out false premises, by pushing out the most extremes, liberals have been very successful in grabbing hold of the moral majority. Now, these people aren't moral at all. These are godless people, horrible people that will lie, cheat, and steal to get their power. Now, you and I all know that. We know this. But what's our plan going forward? Because if any of those numbers in the poll are relatively true, I don't think that bodes well for our country in the future. I really don't. I really don't. And I know we believe in this fighter, Donald Trump. We believe in him. I believe he has shown us the way. How do we push back against the left? How do we push back against the lies? If somebody hits us, we hit them back 3 times as hard. I believe that. But when I look at some of these races, this should be completely blown open. Even if the media is going to cook the books, there should never be a conversation about potentially losing this country. So what do we need to do? We cannot sit on the sidelines anymore. We just can't. We need to figure out a way to win back the culture. We just have to. Because if we don't, it doesn't matter if the president's reelected. What happens after 4 years? I know there's a tendency, hey, we have a big election, and then we go back to our daily lives, and then, oh my God, okay, 2.5 years from now, when it's time for another presidential election, I mean, we pay a little bit of attention to the midterms, but not really. Come on. Right? And then what happens is the Democrats are able to take back the House, which is what they did back in 2018. We need to start investigating who our future leaders are. We need to start investigating and figuring out what sort of a message we want to deliver to the country. Because what's really scary is, folks, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to be the anti-Santa Claus. Every election year, Democrats are promising all of these freebies. We're going to tax the rich. And if we tax the rich, then we'll be able to give you free health care, free education, free housing, free everything. raise the minimum wage. These are things that all sound very good because we haven't done a very good job articulating why those policies have unintended consequences, like not helping the people they claim to want to help. We could talk about that all day. But I'm seriously concerned. I am seriously concerned. And as much as I support the president, hear me very carefully. I support this man. Again, I've known the family for a very long time. I've done deals with them here in New York for a very long time. I completely support him. But I am very concerned about his prospects over the next 27 days. I don't believe the polls fully, but some of the things that I'm seeing out there, and I'm on social media, and I know, listen, social media is not exactly real life. But there are far too many people who absolutely believe the lies that are told by the left. And I think that as conservatives, as Republicans, we need to do more to get our message out there. We need to be as fierce as the left is. I'm not saying violent, okay? We don't do that. We don't do violence, okay? We're not into burning down our neighborhoods, okay? But we need to get out there and get belly to belly with people and share with them these conservative principles of limited government, of free market capitalism. Understanding, yes, every country in the world has had some bad history. Capitalism doesn't bring every single person out of poverty. No system has. But it's the best system that has been devised in human history that has brought more people out of poverty than any other system ever devised. If you look at the numbers, I saw a recent report that came out the other day. Between the 1960s and up to now, poverty has been cut literally by 80%. 80%. And no time in human history did you have that gap, that gap shrink the way it did. That happened because of free market capitalism. Not just here in the United States, but other countries throughout the world who have also adopted free market capitalism. We need to do a better job. We can't put all of our hopes and desires in one man because we don't know what's going to happen with the one man. And I believe he will get reelected. But I'm thinking about not just the next 4 years, but the next 40 years. We have to think that far out because the left has. This quote unquote revolution that we've seen from the left has been going on since what? The 1950s and the 1960s. They have not stopped. The subversive message of tearing down this country, highlighting the country's original sins, calling racism for everything that happens. Oh, black people commit crimes. Well, that must be because of racism. Black people make up 50% of the prison population. That must be because of racism. That message has permeated throughout the black community, and it's an abject lie. Racism has nothing to do with it. Women make 25 cents on the dollar compared to men. Well, 75 cents. They do the math. Now, if you do the research, a man and a woman working in the same company with the same background, doing the same work, make the same amount of money. But the left is able to get away with the lie saying women don't make the same as men. Why? Oh, because statistically, if you add up the average of what women make and you add up the average of what men make, then women make different. Of course, because women and men make different choices as far as their careers are concerned. But we have many issues that need to be discussed. Many issues we need to figure out how we're going to deliver this message to the American people. Because I am seriously concerned with the direction we're taking right now. The election of Donald Trump was cathartic for us. For many of us who have been students of the game of politics for a long time, we've seen weak Republican come and go. We've seen good men be torn down. Go back to George Bush. Now, George Bush was the first president that I voted for. A legitimate good man. Though, now he's a little bit on the outs, a little bit, right? Because, he's criticized the president. Never criticized Obama, but he has a shit ton to say about President Trump. The same thing with the loser, Mitt Romney. But George Bush, a genuine good man. But for 8 years, suffered the onslaught of being called a racist. Do you remember Hurricane Katrina? Now, we all love Kanye West today, But what was Kanye West saying about George W. Bush? George Bush doesn't care about black people. This race card has been played for decades and decades. But what has changed? Nothing has changed. We have a disgusting clip from Michelle Obama today. Disgusting clip. Excoriating the president. The president's fomenting hate. The president is trying to scare you about the browning of America. Michelle Obama, a very privileged person, still talking about how she experiences racism today. Really disgusting stuff. Listen to this clip with Michelle Obama.
You're feeling the consequences of this president's failure to take this pandemic seriously, from his constant downplaying of the importance of masks and social distancing. Today, more Americans have died from this virus than died in the wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, Vietnam, and Korea combined. Take all those lives bravely sacrificed and double it. That is roughly the scale of this tragedy.
You know, real quick, I still have yet to hear a plan. What would the Democrats have done differently than the president? Even the same Fauci himself. Said that the president has listened to almost all of his prescriptions about what we need to do. The only thing I've heard from Michelle Obama, the only thing I've heard from Joe Biden is, oh, we have to listen to the scientists, listen to the experts. Can you please show me where the president has not done so? Now, the left is gloating because, oh, the president and many people in his cabinet have gotten the coronavirus because they weren't taking this seriously. And now this is the chickens coming home to roost. Well, again, the president is in the most protective bubble in the world. He is surrounded by people who are tested constantly every single day. He was tested constantly every single day, yet it still happened. Not because he was skirting any particular policies, but because this is a contagious virus. We could all agree to that. But there's nothing that we've heard from the left that would help us to understand what they would have done differently. You know, it's another thing that really boggles the mind is they blame the president not just for the 200,000 deaths. Oh, the United States is the third largest country in the world, but we have 20% of the coronavirus deaths. Now, let me ask you guys a question. How many of you know the number of people that died in Russia? How many of you know the number of people that died in China? You see, nobody can answer that question because they're not giving their numbers. Or the numbers that they have given are not to be believed whatsoever. China says they haven't had any deaths since March. Can you believe that? Over 1 billion people, the epicenter of coronavirus. They haven't had any new coronavirus cases or deaths since March. Are you kidding me? Yet the media is using that as a weapon against the president. Now, regarding the economy, Joe and Kamala are out there blaming the president for the collapse in the economy. But I'm having a hard time getting someplace logically. The Democrats have been calling for ever-increasing lockdowns. Some of the most radical people on the left have said we need to lock down until there's a vaccination. Now, I don't know about you. If you can't go to work or if you can't open your business, how do you expect your business to survive? How do you expect to pay your employees until some distant future when we might have a vaccine? So I don't see how anything that has come out of the left or supposedly listening to the experts from now until kingdom come, I don't see how that would have saved the economy. And I can give you all the evidence that you want. I'm right here in New York City. We're still under lockdown. Many parts of our city are re-locking down even more because now we're getting spikes in cases. Yes. But I'm like, wait a minute. How are we getting spikes in cases when we followed the science? We flattened the curve, yet here it is. It's all nonsense. It's all BS. Over half of our restaurants, and we have tens of thousands of restaurants in the city, over half of them are likely to close over the next couple of months. Why? Because we are still locked down. There are some big name restaurants that have been open for decades and decades. There's some restaurants that have been open since the crash in 1929 that have now had to close because of these draconian measures of lockdowns. Some of them were able to pay their employees for a couple of months. But now we're 6.5 months into this, and there's still no indicator as to when they're going to be able to fully open up again. Restaurants in New York City are only can only accommodate 25% capacity. Can you pay your bills with 25% of your regular check? I doubt it. Rent is very expensive here in New York, especially commercial rents. And it's not just happening here in New York. It's happening in California. It's happening in Chicago. It's happening in all of our cities. So how the president gets blamed for an economic collapse is beyond me. It makes no logical sense whatsoever when the only thing we've heard from the left is to lock down even more. Let's listen to the rest of this disgusting clip from Michelle Obama.
Is roughly the scale of this tragedy. And our commander-in-chief, sadly, has been missing in action. And his willful mismanagement of the COVID crisis is just one example of his negligence. And it is frustrating to hear some folks say that you've been the beneficiary of privilege.
Here it comes.
That the color of your skin gives you a head start. That is the reality for far too many hardworking, decent Americans. But right now, the president and his allies are trying to tap into that frustration and distract from his breathtaking failures.
What she's trying to do now is she's speaking directly to the middle of the country. Because he says, yes, I recognize that you're being held accountable for the fact that you're white, but don't listen to the president. We're not trying to actually take away your rights. We're not trying to actually take away your property. We're not trying to actually stop you from living a life because you're white. No. The president's just trying to scare you because of all the black and brown bodies that are trying to live next to you. Oh, yes. The president's trying to stoke up all your deepest, darkest, racist fears. But don't give in to the hate. Don't give in to it. Don't pay attention to what's happening with Black Lives Matter. Don't pay attention to what's happening with Antifa. Don't do any of that. Those are only racist dog whistles. You're better than that. This country is better than that. Don't be a racist, you racist bastard.
Giving folks someone to blame other than them. They're stoking fears about Black and brown Americans, lying about how minorities will destroy the suburbs, whipping up violence and intimidation. And they're pinning it all on what's been an overwhelmingly peaceful movement.
Oh, wait a minute. Overwhelmingly peaceful? Overwhelmingly peaceful. I'm not so sure Portland's been overwhelmingly peaceful. I'm not so sure Seattle has been overwhelmingly peaceful. I'm not so sure what's been happening here in New York is overly peaceful. You see, again, this is the point I'm trying to make. These idiots sit here and lie with impunity. Nobody's going to hold them accountable. We're not doing enough to hold her accountable. Michelle Obama, who, my God, she said herself, she wasn't proud of this country until her husband was elected as president of the United States. The same Michelle Obama who's buying waterfront properties in Martha's Vineyard, with the last time I checked, ain't no black people around there. Not a one. But yet Michelle Obama is talking about how horrible and vicious and viciously racist this country is. This can't happen anymore. We can't let them get away with this, folks. We just can't. Because if we continue to do that, we're not going to have a country anymore. We got to get that through our skulls.
Solidarity. And the one thing this president is really, really good at is using fear and confusion and spreading lies to win. Look, I get it, but I also feel it.
She feels it.
As a Black woman.
Oh, here it is.
Who has, like the overwhelming majority of people of color in this nation, done everything in my power to live a life of dignity and service and honesty. The knowledge that any of my fellow Americans is more afraid of me than the chaos we are living through right now, well, that hurts.
so it hurts that people are afraid of Michelle Obama because she's Black, apparently. Yeah, people are afraid of Michelle Obama. BS, folks. BS. You know, speaking of race, there was nobody's talking about it because the big news over the weekend was about the president and Corona and COVID, yada, yada, yada. But there was a kind of a nasty situation that took place on Saturday Night Live. We got this nasty slut, Megan Thee Stallion, performing, doing what she does, or her and Cardi B shaking their asses, being really good role models for the young Black women of America. And so at the beginning of her set on Saturday Night Live, she decides to attack Daniel Cameron. Daniel Cameron, the Republican Black Attorney General in Kentucky. I mean, again, this is beyond me, folks. We're back to talking about Breonna Taylor. And by the way, I actually have some tape of what the grand jury heard from one of the officers that was involved in the shooting. And we're going to get into that after this Megan Thee Stallion clip. But take a look at this clip. Really disgusting stuff again, folks. And these people, again, they do this with impunity. No shame whatsoever. And the media laps it up.
Let's talk about moment of the night. They have come from musical performer Megan Thee Stallion, who delivered a powerful message about the Kentucky Attorney General overseeing the Breonna Taylor case. Take a listen.
Daniel Cameron is no different than the sellout Negroes that sold our people into slavery by savages.
We need to protect our Black women and love our Black women. Because at the end of the day, we need our Black women.
Yeah. So protect our Black women by doing what? I have a few different ways to protect our Black women. How about this? How about you don't have sex with a bunch of thugs? How about you don't have sex with a bunch of morons that are likely to end up dead or in jail? Oh, why? Because they want to be in a gang. Or why? Because they want to sell drugs in the street. Why don't you do that? How you want to help Black women? How about Black women don't have kids with these same morons? Okay? Because now you do this and now the cycle continues, right? Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, Black people are living in poverty. Black people have inequality. Why wonder why? It's amazing how the left gets away with saying, well, because of the history of slavery, because of the history of racism in this country. But what the hell does racism have to do with morons like Megan Thee Stallion? What does racism have to do with what happened with Breonna Taylor? Nobody can tell me anything, because race had nothing to do with the investigation that led up to her dying. It had nothing to do with it. The reason why her house was under investigation is because the saintly Breonna Taylor, her boyfriends were known big-time drug dealers in her city. Big time. In fact, the cops noticed her working as, again, the money bags. Money hiding in her apartment, brand new clothes, brand new cars, can't be accounted for. Her house was under investigation. People keep saying, oh, this was a no-knock warrant, and Breonna Taylor was shot in her bed while she was sleeping. That did not happen. So now that the grand jury comes back and says, we're not going to charge these officers with murder because the shooting was justified, because we have a witness that heard the police say, police, we are coming in. What the hell do you expect to happen? Should the cops go to jail for murder? Why? To satisfy the mob? So we're okay. We're okay with persecuting innocent people to satisfy a bunch of morons that have been led by the left. This is the crap I'm talking about. This is why I get so passionate about what's happening to our country. Because we have a whole group of people, and I come from that community, from the black community. We have a whole group of people that will see the crimes, that will see murders, drug deals happening right in front of their faces and say nothing. Why? Because they're more concerned about the black community looking bad than dealing with the actual issues that are holding us back. Why is it that the leading cause of death for a young black male under the age of 30 is homicide, compared to the leading cause of death of a young white male under 30 are accidents, like car accidents, for instance? That is a massive disconnect. Whitey didn't put you in the ghetto. Whitey didn't make you pick up a gun. Whitey didn't make you go out with this big-time drug dealer that eventually led to your death. Whitey had nothing to do with that. Whitey has nothing to do with the unwed mothers that are walking around this country. This has to stop. You know what? Let me get into this tape with one of the officers who was involved in the shooting, Sergeant Mattingly. Listen to Sergeant Mattingly telling in vivid detail the events that led up to Breonna Taylor's death. This was not a murder. This was not a no-knock warrant. This was a tragic accident. Let's listen to Sergeant Mattingly.
When we all got up in line, I knocked on the door, banged on it. We didn't announce the first couple because our intent was not to hit the door. Our intent was to give her plenty of time to come to the door because they said she was probably there alone. So we predetermined to give her plenty of time to come to the door. Banged on the door, no response. Banged on it again, no response. At that point, we started announcing ourselves, please come to the door. Please, we have a search warrant. Mm-hmm. While we're doing this, there was a neighbor or somebody upstairs right on the staircase that started arguing with Detective Hankinson and Lieutenant Hoover. And they were both giving him commands to go back into his apartment. And he kept saying, I wasn't really paying attention to what he was saying, something about leave that girl alone or something like that. But while he was doing that, we were still announcing, police, come to the door, police search warrant. And we banged. I probably banged on the door six or seven different time periods. Not 6 or 7 times, but 6 or 7 different times, which seems like an eternity when you're up at a door waiting. It probably lasted between 45 seconds and a minute, banging on the door. And at that time, I look back at Lieutenant Hoover, and he says, I guess go ahead and hit it. Because at one point, probably after about the third time we banged, Mike was standing at the doorway, and he says, I can hear somebody inside. I think they're coming to the door. So we thought they were coming to the door. And then we didn't hear anything else. So we kept banging and announcing. And at that point, Lieutenant Hoover said, go ahead and hit it. So I looked at Mike and said, go ahead. So he hits the first time, and it hits right on the door handle and didn't move the door. And every time he hits, people are announcing, please search warrant, please search warrant. Second time he hits the good spot, and it almost knocks the door open. I could see the deadbolt at an angle, and I could see a crack in the door leading into the apartment. So I said, this one's going to go. So he hit the third time, and as soon as he hit the door, came open, they're yelling, please search warrant, please search warrant. I go to around the corner. I clear the living room on the right-hand side where you can see the sliding glass door. As I turn the corner, as soon as I cleared the threshold of the front door, I could see down the hallway. My mind your mind works so quick in this situation, it's unreal. Because as soon as I cleared it, I'm face on about probably 20 feet away, right down the hallway. There's a bedroom door on the right, and there's the male and a female. The male's closest to the door, so he's to my right. And as I turn the doorway, he's in a stretched out position with his hands with a gun. And as soon as I clear, he fires. Boom. And it was almost like at the shooting range where two things flip at the same time and you got to shoot, no shoot. But I mean, they were like shoulder to shoulder. My mind's going, this ain't right. You know, something's off here. Because all the doors I've made entry in, I've never seen this.
There it is, folks. In vivid detail. In vivid detail. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend shot at the police first. The media and celebrities were able to get away for 6 months. For 6 months telling the lie that this was a no-knock warrant and that Breonna Taylor was murdered. We've seen so many cases like this when a grand jury decides not to prosecute, or when an unfortunate situation where a police officer actually has to go to trial and he's found not guilty. The inevitable happens. We get more rioting and looting, fires, murders. Why? Because the Democrat Party have for decades been able to brainwash black people into believing that justice can never be done. And they're able to utilize cases like Breonna Taylor's as examples of why this country has a long way to go, that we're still racist, that we're still out to kill black people, and Breonna Taylor was murdered. Oh, moving on. So it looks like we have, indeed, yes we do, a crime update. Let's go. Yeah! So according to the New York Post, New York City's crime wave reaches new heights as this year's murder tally surpasses all of 2019. And by the way, we're only in October. New York City surpassed another grim crime milestone last month as the number of murders blew past all of 2019's tally, and there are still 3 months remaining. The NYPD recorded 51 murders last month, or nearly double the 2019 figure for September, pushing the total number of homicides this year to 344. Now, I know that's pretty slow for those of you in Chicago, but still, bear with us. That is already the highest overall annual figure the city has seen since 2013, when 335 slayings were logged that year. If the current pace holds, murders could surpass 400 for the year. The last time homicides ticked up above 400 was in 2012, when 419 were recorded. Meanwhile, shootings more than doubled last month compared to the same time period in 2019. There were 67 shootings last September, while there were 152 shooting incidents for the month this year. The rising figures come as the department's gun enforcement numbers jumped by 300%. And arrests have been made in an attempt to curb the epidemic of weapons violence that has marred the city since the summertime. In September, the NYPD recorded 607 firearm collars, which police officials have particularly praised, given the roughly 2,500 cut in manpower and nearly 60% drop in overtime. Despite the unparalleled challenges they face every day, our officers continue to engage with the community and zero in on the drivers of crime, Police Commissioner DeMont Shea said in a statement. At the end of August, Gotham surpassed 1,100 shootings for the first time since 2015. There it is, folks. This is what happens when you have bad liberal leadership. But of course, this is all the president's fault, right? Because the president is the mayor. The president controls the police officers here in New York. That's all the president's fault, right? And it doesn't just end there, folks. Chicago this weekend, we had another grim weekend where over 50 people were shot. Now, my God, how many weekends are we going to go by without dozens and dozens of people being shot in Chicago? I guess the president runs the Chicago PD over there as well. Apparently. But by the way, folks, I think, do I hear it? It's true. It is. It's St. Fauci. I can't believe it. Hallelujah. Yes. Hallelujah. 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 Yes, it is, folks. It's St. Fauci coming down from on high to deliver an anointed edict on his daily quest to eradicate coronavirus from the United States. Dr. Fauci is infallible. Dr. Fauci is the one above all who knows how to beat back the coronavirus. Yes, folks, we have another update from the great Saint Anointed One, the infallible one, Dr. Anthony Fauci. Dr. Fauci is now back with a dire prediction. A dire prediction that entails the idea that 400,000 Americans could die from COVID-19 if action isn't taken this fall and winter. Fauci told attendees at a virtual event held by American University that between 300,000 and 400,000 could die from coronavirus in the country. The models tell us if we don't do what we need to do in the fall and winter, we could have 300 to 400,000 deaths. Fauci's prediction goes beyond a University of Washington study from August that said as many as 300,000 people could die of COVID-19 by December 1st. As of Wednesday morning, the U.S. has recorded 210,000 deaths and more than 7.5 million confirmed infections. Fauci also asserted on Tuesday that a vaccine will probably not be available to most Americans until next summer or the fall, aligning with the CDC testimony last month. Fauci said during an event on Monday that this means life may not return to normal until the end of next year. At the American University virtual event, Fauci acknowledged the decreasing trust in him as a public official, especially among Republicans and those who believe the country needs to reopen fully. He says, maybe 50% of you hate me because you think I'm trying to destroy the country. But listen to me for 6 weeks or so and do what I say, and you'll see the numbers go down. Fauci pleaded, according to the university. But see, again, I don't understand something. We shut down pretty severely here in New York. Not for 6 weeks even, though. For months. For months. At least 4 months. LA, the same thing. But while we were shut down, 32,000 New Yorkers died. 12,000 elderly people died in nursing homes. But we were completely shut down. Oh, sure, we flattened the curve after everybody that was going to die, died. But listen to the great St. Fauci. Just 6 more weeks. Just 6 weeks of staying locked in your home and being afraid of every person that comes around the corner. 6 more weeks. And finally, we can flatten the curve. Again, I say, to what end? To what end? We may not have a vaccine, and he's saying the vaccine may not be widely available until the end of next year. So what is 6 weeks going to do? What happens after we come out of our homes after 6 weeks? Isn't the virus still going to be there? So what's the great Saint Dr. Fauci going to say? Oh, time to lock down again. And it just goes on and on and on and on and on. Because these people are full of it, folks. Again, I'm not trying to diminish the severity of coronavirus. I'm really not. But we have to find some balance here. We can't be afraid of our shadow. That's what the president said the other day. We can't be afraid. Because we don't know when we're going to have a vaccine. And we can't be keeping our damn head in the sands trying to figure out what's going to happen next. Now, interestingly enough, the media keep talking about the infallibility of mail-in ballots. The president's only trying to stir strife because he knows he's going to lose and he wants to put the election results in doubt. Well, here it is. The U.S. Postal Service mail carrier arrested for dumping mail, including numerous ballots. Oh, in Jersey. Take a look at that. The Department of Justice announced on Wednesday that a U.S. Postal Service mail carrier in New Jersey had been arrested for dumping mail, including 99 election ballots. Nicholas Benchine, 26 of Kearney, New Jersey, is charged by complaint with 1 count of delay, secretion, or detention of mail and 1 count of obstruction of mail, the DOJ said. Approximately 1,800 pieces of mail, including 627 pieces of first class, 873 pieces of standard class, and 2 pieces of certified mail and 99 general election ballots destined for residents in West Orange were recovered from dumpsters in North Arlington and West Orange between October 2nd, 2020 and October 5th, 2020. The statement noted that the mail had been scheduled to be delivered on September 28th, but it didn't get there. The recovered mail was placed back into the mail system for delivery to its intended recipients. Copies of the recovered mail were made and retained as evidence. Bochine is scheduled to appear in federal court this afternoon before Magistrate Judge Kathy Walder. The statement noted that if convicted, Bochine faces up to 5 years in prison and a $250,000 fine. But remember, there's no fraud. There's no fraud. Mail-in ballots are perfectly safe. Mail-in ballots are perfectly fine. But remember, the great Saint Dr. Fauci said, going to the polls would be perfectly safe. Now, speaking of coronavirus, we keep being told that we have to listen to all the experts. Listen to the scientists. Listen to the experts. That's, of course, unless those experts have an alternative opinion about how we fight the coronavirus. This was in Daily Wire. Thousands of medical and public health experts have signed onto a declaration calling for an end to lockdown policies in favor of a more targeted approach to combating the coronavirus pandemic. Harvard University professor Dr. Martin Kulldorff, Oxford University epidemiologist Dr. Sunetra Gupta, and Stanford University physician and epidemiologist Dr. Jay Bhattacharya wrote and published the Great Barrington Declaration on Sunday. It has since drawn tens of thousands of signatories. By Wednesday morning, nearly 3,200 medical and public health scientists, nearly 4,800 medical practitioners, and over 73,000 others have signed on to the declaration. The declaration comes as some elected officials in the U.S., such as Andrew Cuomo, are cracking down again on their states with renewed lockdown measures. It says here, as infectious disease epidemiologists, see that 3 times, and public health scientists, we have grave concerns about the damaging physical and mental health impacts of the prevailing COVID-19 policies and recommend an approach we call focused protection. The declaration begins. Current lockdown policies are producing devastating effects on short and long-term public health. The results, to name a few, include lower childhood vaccination rates, worsening cardiovascular disease outcomes, fewer cancer screenings, and deteriorating mental health, leading to greater excess mortality in years to come, with the working class and young members of society carrying the heaviest burden. Keeping students out of school is a grave injustice, it continues. The doctors say the current approach to fighting the pandemic, locking down wide swaths of the economy and barring people from gathering in places such as schools and churches, will cause irreparable damage if continued until a vaccine is readily available to the public. Instead, the doctors recommend a targeted approach that protects high-risk populations, such as the elderly and those with morbidities. The doctors also point out that for many people, especially the young, COVID-19 is less dangerous than many other harms, including influenza. The doctors endorse the same strategy followed by Sweden's government in fighting the virus, known as herd immunity. As more people from less at-risk populations get the virus and build up an immunity, the threat of the virus to society at large falls. As immunity builds in the population, the risk of infection to all, including the vulnerable, falls, the declaration says. And finally, we know that all populations will eventually reach herd immunity. For example, the point at which the rate of new infections is stable, and that this can be assisted by, but not dependent upon, a vaccine. Our goal, therefore, should be to minimize mortality and social harm until we reach herd immunity. Now, something tells me that anybody who posts this declaration, or if you visit their website at gbdeclaration.org, gbdeclaration.org, something tells me that website's not going to stay up for a long time. There was another consortium of doctors that came out a couple of months ago and basically said the same thing, and their website was taken down. Their PayPal accounts were suspended. And anybody on Twitter and on Instagram that happened to post anything regarding that message, their accounts were suspended. Because at the end of the day, it's not about listening to the experts. It's about listening to the experts that our betters tell us we should listen to. See, these are all the things that I'm talking about when I say that the future of our country is at stake. The lines could not be clearer. The direction we want to go is completely different than the direction they want to go. There is a lot riding on this election. The norms, the freedoms that we have as Americans can very well come to an end, or at least be hampered if Joe Biden becomes president of the United States. If you're in places where the infection never went out of hand, would you be satisfied with having Joe Biden calling for a national lockdown a year after the coronavirus came to our country, when nobody in your community is infected, or you know nobody that's even died from the coronavirus? Does that sound like a reasonable approach? Well, I'm here to tell you that's the approach Joe Biden's going to take. That's the approach the left as a whole wants to take, because it allows them to take away your freedoms. Look at New Jersey. You look at here in New York. You look at California. All still under emergency declarations. It's been 7 months now. Those declarations have given these governors unbelievable power that they've never had before. And this is the longest amount of time that they've had it. When's it going to end? The only way it can end is if we reelect Donald Trump. That's it for today. We'll be back here on Friday. Thanks for joining us. If you're listening to us and you like what you've heard on YouTube, you're watching us on YouTube, please be sure to hit the like and subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're listening to us on the podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, please be sure to like and subscribe there. Thank you guys for the support, and we will see you back here on Friday. Take care.